question. That's completely fine. Um, so I'll send you this one, and that is the thing at hand. That is the question at hand, right? With double calendars, this is we're looking at the test today, and tomorrow we'll look at these same tests, and we'll get into more like some Greeks with it. But today it'll suffice to say, and maybe if you guys want to do some homework, I've got some homework for you that'll help the discussion tomorrow. I think the discussion will be really rich tomorrow if we look at it maybe in your own brokerage, look at these tests. When you're doing a 14 and 15 day, what you fundamentally want something different to happen than the 9 and 16 days. That's my puzzle, kind of like, there's my thesis. Why do you think that's the case? Why do you think you would want the same strategy, double calendar? Why would you think the 14-15 day would have a different goal than the 9-16? Obviously, the goal is to make money, obviously. But what do you think the thing at play is? Nine, 16, 14, 15, each trying to accomplish something different. What do you think the 14, 15 is trying to accomplish? Any guesses? I made one of the co-founders of Option Omega leave the chat from my question, but you guys have survived it, so I'll give you the answer. If you model out 14, 15 days in your brokerage, and I invite you to do that tonight. It'll be a good discussion for tomorrow. You're probably going to notice a couple different things. Most likely, you're not going to be long theta, right? You're going to be down theta, right? Negative theta. Okay? Because the theta between the short and the long, there's not enough differential in time to matter, right? When you put the trade on, at the time of putting the trade on. So you're not sitting, it's not a trade where you want it to sit there and do nothing, right? You actually need it to do something. And that is the difference between these two trades. The difference in style when trading between a 14-15 and 9-16. And don't think about those specific days. Like Castle, that's a good, like, why do 14-15 or 9-16? That's a good question, and we can talk more about that tomorrow. Think about it in terms, and this is the thing with calendars. This is what I'm trying to get at. Think in terms of the difference between the long and the short strike. That's the strategy difference. That's the big brain difference that we're dealing with, the complex difference that we're dealing with options. 14-15, we have 1 day difference. So what is that trying to accomplish? A 14-15 double calendar is largely trying to allow you, to put on a long strangle for cheap. Now, maybe it's the Frappuccino talking. I know this probably is by far the most complex talk we've had so far in these talks, but hang with me if you can. Of course you can hang with me. I'm not smart. Right? That don't mean it to sound cocky, but stay with me if you can. Like, what is a long strangle? Have you guys ever traded a long strangle before? I'm going to share a link here. That's called the optionsplaybook.com. It's a fun book to just get for, strategies, but they also have free on the website. You can look at it. And they go through just a bunch of different types of strategies, which is killer. I have a giant trash can driving by. That's right. That's exactly right, Ro. A 1-day DC, what it is that's a beautiful way to put it. You're renting time to capture movement, meaning you want it to go towards your short strike. You want it to hit. You want it to get close. You don't want it to go past, but you do want it to get to one of those spots. Does that make sense, everybody? When thinking through a 1-day calendar, you're renting time to get to the short strike. And everything has trade-offs. So you could lose money if it goes past that, so you don't make as much. It's not infinite P&L, but it allows you to do it cheaper. That's right. That's right. Do you guys have any questions about that? We'll put this up, and I do. If you're interested in calendars, calendars are my thing. Like, I love calendars. This is Rusty and Matt and I talked about calendars for years before we built Option Omega. Like, I've largely done double calendars my whole trading career. But it wasn't until the advent of 5-day-a-week expirations that you had this type of trade. You know, at best you could do a 0-2 or like 1-2-4 or something like that, or 1-3 or something like that. But with the advent of like doing a 1-2, right, it allows you to make a move towards either direction. So if you're interested in this, go back and listen to this again and do these tests in your brokerage and start graphing it out. That's exactly right. Yeah. Money, yeah. It's a time thing that only options gives you. So that's the difference in that one. That's the one where you have a 1-day expiration, is it gives you that chance to get to either side. Now let's look at the other one. Let's look at the 9-16 one. So the 9-16, that's not the case, right? You do want it to get there. You do want it to get there, but you don't have to get it to get there. Because if you graph this one out, you are long theta. You are collecting money in this. You will still, the most important thing you can do with this, if you have a good graphing thing in your brokerage, is go through each day and look at what the P&L graph is doing. Because what you'll notice, I'm using my hands a lot today, I'm sorry for that, but I want you to focus on the mustache. If the mustache is time, that's stupid. That's right, option strat's great for it too. Your P&L is going to look like this. You're putting the trade on right here. Because you're positive theta, you are like this, okay? And you're collecting theta. So you're going to be able to get in, get out. It's a positive carry trade, right? And what's going to happen through time when you have these longer differentials between the long and the short is every day it's going to start going like this. And through time, it's going to go like this, and to where if you look at expiration, it's going to be like this. By expiration of the shorts, it has turned into more of that 1-day calendar that we were looking at, where it benefits to move. So the 9-16, or ones that have a longer duration between the long and the short, what those are doing is they're just trades that you're putting on that are collecting theta, that are moving slower into that area of a more long strangle type strategy where you want movement, right? So it's one of those things where it's like a condor. At the beginning, just sitting there is fine. It's great. The difference is that through time, you want movement, right? Whereas a condor, in some ways you want movement, in some ways you want it to just go to sleep, That's what you want it to do. Does that make Does that make sense? The difference between those two? If you get that, like if you get that understanding of like what calendars are doing, it really is a pretty powerful concept in your to put in your toolbox. hmm That will be a beautiful continuation for tomorrow's discussion, Ro, because Ro's making a great point, and I'm in the same boat. Like I'm. If you look at my portfolio, what things I do, they're mostly calendars, and because of that, it's been a good year. But also because of that, there's been times this year where you just get, hurt because you're so long Vega, and by the time you're done with it, I mean, you can be like 1,000, 2,000 Vega, depending on what sizing and all your account size, stuff like that, much larger sometimes. And so, meaning for every point in reduction in vol, you're losing, that much money. So you have to think through it in the terms of like a holistic portfolio. Obviously, maybe you do this with condors, or maybe you do put some long, there's things you have to diversify even in options. But that notion, short term, that if there's one takeaway today, 0-1, a short term time frame, 1-2, 1-3, 1-5, whatever. Um, Not as much theta. You want movement, right? Uh, a spread between a short and a long that's like a week apart, or 2 weeks apart, or a month apart, or something like that. You're positive theta. You don't need movement at the beginning to start making money. But as time goes on, you need it to make money. You need it to move. You need that flower to blossom towards the direction it's going to be heading without going past that. Any questions about that? I used my hands a lot today. Let's talk about it, Hammer. I was hoping you could cover short-term calendars, double cons for vol crush or expansion. In this screenshot is an example. Is there a calendar double con to trade short tomorrow's higher vol and long the lower vol? Assuming we're right on vol and direction. Yeah, so that's tomorrow's. What days are those expirations, Hammer? What's the 27th? Is that Tuesday? Yeah, so that would be a 1-4, right? So you could totally do a 1-4. I mean, and what would to take kind of the discussion today and to move it into like practice. So 1-4, depending on, that's like that weird fine line sometimes. Sometimes it's going to be positive theta, sometimes it's not going to be theta. So what I would do is if you um, if you look and model it out on your brokerage, if I recognize that, that's Tasty Works, but I could be wrong. Um, I would start by doing which I'm not going to give you any advice on what trade to do, but some of the things you could look at is you could say, okay, I'm going to start with like a 25 delta to look. Tomorrow's 25 delta, call and put, and then buy the 4-day out, the Tuesday ones of the same strike. And you can look in your brokerage and say, is that positive theta or is it negative theta? I bet it's going to be negative theta. And because it's negative theta, what you could look at is you could say is, at least from my vantage point, if I was doing that, I would say, is there a realistic chance that we blow through the 25 tomorrow? Obviously, no one knows. Freaking just read the tape, see what happens. But from a probability standpoint, is there a way? Is there a good chance that we blow through that? If there is, um, yeah, give me 1 second, Ron. Sure thing. If it if there's a good chance, I might move them out a little bit. But what I want to do with that type of trade, with 1 day especially, is I want to try to get where I think not unrealistic, but the most realistic where it could go tomorrow. Like where I think if you're using gamma levels, you know, uh, big fan of spot gamma myself. If you're using stuff like that, maybe you use their combos, you know, certain key levels. If you use market profile, whatever you do, standard deviation, whatever you want, whatever you think's the case of where it's going to go tomorrow, you could look and you could say, all right, I'm going to do the shorts there, and I'm going to do the longs for Tuesday. And basically, what you're trying to do in that type of trade, if you're going to do that short-term trade, is you want it to have movement tomorrow, but you don't want it to blow past it. You want to get to it, but you don't want to go past it. That's it, really. That'd be the way in football terms, simplifying the playbook. Like it's a slant route. We're not trying to go crazy with it. That's what we want, to go to it without blowing past it. Does that make sense, Hammer, at all? Sure. And so, like an iron fly. Well, in some ways, except for the iron fly, you don't want it. It's in some ways like you want the opposite. Like an iron fly, you want it to sit still and then take your profits. That's right. Yeah, that's true. You don't want it to go too fast past it. That's right. That's a fair point. But yeah, basically, like if you were doing it, what you in a perfect world, again, I don't know. I'm not looking at the thing, and I can't find my MacBook charger for some reason. So uh, I can't pull up anything that requires a battery at this point besides this. Um, so basically, you want to go you in the morning, like in a perfect scenario, you want it to move a little bit, and then either get out for a specific profit, 10%, 20, whatever your MO is, and then or you want it to open closer to it and then just get out for a larger set. But you definitely don't want to let it go past it, right? Or one little secret is like if you're watching it, go past it and then like get out on the first pull back into it. That's one way to play it. Yeah, Hammer, I hear you. It's just really hard on days like yesterday. Like I like yesterday's FOMC. It won't go down in the history books, but it was a weird one. And so I don't have a lot of good advice, and I'd rather just not say much than give you stupid advice. Like it just feels like those type of days. There's people that killed it with double calendars yesterday. Like people, spreads were weird yesterday. Is all I can say to it. So like I did some butterflies. I was trying to play both sides the best I could. But yeah, in some ways, I think the play for stuff like that is honestly, like, this is just me talking shop. It's not advice again, but like in some of the ways, like I want to play the ramp into the event and then be done the day of event. Like in some ways, like I would almost rather like last week do the Monday, Wednesday of this week to be long that day as it slowly kind of like ramps up vol. Um, and that's one way you can do calendars and stuff like that. So Hammer, I'm not trying to ignore you, but I just want to give you a good answer as much as I can. So, um, let me look at Ryan's real quick. I'll share it. Can you guys see Sleeper? So 17 and 9, you're putting them on at Thursday. It's a 1-4. You're getting out 8% profit or taking the stop on 20. Yeah, I mean, I think that's very similar type trade, like you're not, here's the thing about options as my battery slowly dies. So if the battery just, if I just quit, it's not because the discussion isn't great. It make me really sad because I love talking about calendars. That's a great test right there because Ryan, because again, it's the notion of like, especially with calendars with anything, like I'm not trying to hit a home run with these things. I'm just trying to like make contact. And that's what this is. It's like you're making contact. An 8% profit target's making contact. What's the bet? Like, what are you doing? What I'm saying is that, and I don't think overnight, I don't think Friday morning we're going to open below the 17 delta of Thursday and the 9 delta call of Thursday. That's the bet. But then what you're also betting is, but I do think we're not going to open unchanged for the day and just stay unchanged for the day. That's the bet with an 8% profit target and 20% stop loss. I don't think it's going to blow through it, but I don't think we're sitting here either. I want a little bit of movement. I want to get paid to play for that movement a little bit. So I like it, Ryan. So cool. Ro, you had a question. The DC expressions related to what you were already explaining. Tighter calendar dates versus wider calendar dates. Could you explain a little more about the role of theta versus delta on short-term plays or longer-term plays that you ride to end game when you're short next day, long the following day? Sorry, my brain's going dead. When you're short next day. Oh, I see. Just when it's like a 1-2. It's a 1-2. I mean, as far as like theta versus delta, the way I'd look at it is like the short-term trades, the 1-2s, the 14-15, the 10-11, like the small differential between the shorts and the longs. What you're trying to do, it's almost independent of theta at a certain point. Like theta is working against you in the sense that if it doesn't do anything, you're going to get hurt. Like the shorts are just going to become worthless, and then it turns into a long strangle, pure long strangle, where you're just bleeding theta. Like my worst loss of like the last 6 months is just totally me being stupid with calendars, where like I broke all my own rules. Where like it did sit there for like, it was like last month or something, where it was like it sat there for 2 days in like a 10-point range. And I just sat there like an idiot and just let the shorts decay to almost nothing. Let them expire, truly a long strangle at this point. And then the next day it continued to do nothing and just got, kicked in the face. Yeah, it hurt. It hurt my heart. Hurt me. And so I, and I'd like to say I don't do that a lot. And I don't do that a lot. But that is the worst case scenario with that. So what you're wanting to do with these type of trades, you don't be a hero with those. You are negative theta. You don't have time to just let it sit there all day. So you either are largely going to get out the next morning or by like lunchtime at the latest, in my mind. That's the way I look at it. I believe Lord Calendar is in the room too. And so he will largely explain it better than I ever could too. Ro, does that help at all? I mean, that's cool. Um, can I explain, Josh Kim, can I explain the big drop on 4.9 when looking at funds by date? When you say $100 a portfolio and there's no stop loss, wouldn't your account go to zero? What does it mean when it says require 2 prices profit targets? I see. Okay. Depending on the test, Josh Kim, if it's using 100% portfolio, and again, Yeah, yeah. Oh, sorry. So this test, let's go back to this one because this one's smarter because it's just using one contract. But let's do the 14-day. A, when I say 100% of portfolio, I never mean 100% of portfolio. What I mean for this test, allocate X percentage of my portfolio as a total and run it at 100%. Does that make sense? Like, I don't ever use 100% portfolio. Like, I'm not a financial advisor, but I feel very confident saying that. Don't go all in on every trade. But to your question, um, if there's no stop loss on this, a calendar, what's we presume, if you look at it, let's find a loss. It expired on the 25th. So the tester will close this whole test when the shorts have expired. Like, it's done at that point, just because we don't know what you would do with those longs, so we can't. So theoretically, yes, it'd be a very bad deal, but you would still have funds in your account because with a calendar, you didn't go to zero. You still have the longs, no matter how much they've decayed. You still have something in them. Um, so even though you're technically using 100% of your portfolio, which again shouldn't, but even if you were with a calendar, you would, unless it's been the stop's been blown past or the short strike has been blown past, you would still have your longs in your account. Does that make sense, Just Kim? I like to marinate. Sorry. I say things in such a way that people are gracious towards me, and they're like, "I've got to marinate on that." And largely, it's just because I don't make a lot of sense when I'm talking. So, sorry for that. Um, so let's keep going here. Is it better to enter the 1-2 DC when market is trending up versus down? I'm going to let the Trizzard of Wades answer that because again, he is largely really good at calendars, and by largely I mean he is good at calendars. Um, yeah, and as he's saying that, notice what he's saying about the time based stuff. That's an important part of it. And Hammer, even to your point, like it is a timed play to some extent. Like you don't with those short term trades, even when you're trying to target like short of all event, go long, you want to get out in a timely fashion because even more than the specific stop loss, time is not on your side after a certain point of the day. Good discussion, guys. I like it. Yeah, Hammer, you can talk, of course. I will have to uh my battery is going to die pretty soon. So sorry for that. But yeah.
No big deal. It's really quick, Troy.
Sure.
Um, so all I'm looking for is a short-term vol crush, vol expansion, literally a scalp, right? Every F1C, every major CPI, any major data, etc., etc., going to be the huge vol. Oh, then looking at, let's say, immediately the day after, for example, today. So in, let's say, some point yesterday, I've never done calendars. I've never done doubles. You know, I've only started trading options like 4 months ago, fully. I've traded for
Mhm.
35 plus years, but never options. A bit and an ask is a bit and an ask, but IV obviously the monkey wrench here. So
Mhm.
I was just thinking, how the hell do we take advantage of what is going to be an obvious fall crush when these events occur? On the ARB guy in me, when I never did a M&A. I was never on an M&A desk. I never did risk ARB or anything like that. But I
Sure.
mean, I know guys who do it. So essentially, their answers to me is going to be, dude, there's an ARB play there, or if there's a free money there, it's already being ARBed. Just because you see vol at 120 during FOMC and 25 the day after, doesn't mean you can just short the day of and then get long the day after. It's because the vol is triple digits today, two digits tomorrow.
Right.
As a concept, I'm like, fuck. Obviously, this sucker is gonna die today, meaning yesterday's options, because
Yeah.
they're all zero DTE, right? Have to die. I'm like, there's got to be a play here. And that's really what I was asking. And the flip side, of course, is we are coming into an FOMC or CPI, whatever it is, right? And we get that vol pump, anticipation of that pump doing some sort of a calendar, whether it's a calendar or a double calendar. That's really what I was getting at, Troy.
Yeah.
I'm not looking for, swing trades here. I'm really looking for like 24-hour trades.
Hmm.
Take advantage of that vol discrepancy. So shut up and mute myself.
No, good thoughts, Hammer. So the thing I would say about yesterday in particular is I you were right. Like in the sense of the way I was looking at yesterday, those the vol like most of the time those events are going to be vol crush events, right? Uh, but because the markets are real things and they're not like textbook, they do whatever they want. And so what happens normally doesn't always happen. And yesterday is a great example of that. Someone, someone, no doubt, like was short. They took the opposite approach. Like I actually think this is going to be terrible for the market. Like they're going 100 basis. So say someone said they're going to do 100 basis points and the market's going to drop 80. Um, well, probably a couple different things happen. When the market dropped at like 30 points real fast at two, some people probably sold all their positions and were really, really happy for the day, right? Vol hadn't got crushed yet. They made a downside play. It was a scalp, like, right? They're good. Then the market went up 50, and people who were holding all their puts, a lot of puts probably got closed out, right? Uh, and someone sent me this yesterday, like the 38.25 SPX put, like at three something, like 310 was 50 cents, and it closed $3,500 or $35 in the money, right? $3,500 or something like that. Well, those event like yesterday was the statistical part that like it didn't do what it's supposed to do. Like vol didn't get crushed yesterday, right? Like vol didn't get crushed at all yesterday, and so I say that to just this, Hammer. You've been trading a long time, like this better than I do. Like it doesn't always do what it's supposed to do, but it always does what it does. And so it the vol crush yesterday largely didn't work. Although I will say that I think people did do well on like 1-2 DCs yesterday. So like the market's weird. But to your point, if you're like, how do I trade that? Like honestly, and I didn't do this, but I always forget, and I've done it before, and it's been fine. I take the approach of like I don't want to sell the vol event as much. I do, but I don't want to sell the vol event as much as I want to buy the vol event as their pricing in vol. So like yes, yeah, they were crazy yesterday. Oh, reserve trade. I said it and I didn't do it. I was busy managing positions, but uh, I have noticed that on FOMC days, to your point, Hammer, like normally Vol just gets absolutely destroyed. The 1 day vol gets destroyed, and so 1-2s are like really, really good. So Hammer, like I think normally I would, not advocate anything, but I would say like you're right. I think doing a 1-2, uh, something like that, doing like a Thursday Friday DC usually works really well in FOMC days. It apparently worked really well yesterday. Missed that trade, and it hurt me to say it, the but also there's a way to play it with calendars going into the event, where like last week you could absolutely have sold, like last Monday you could have sold this Monday's 25 delta, 20 delta, and bought the Wednesday, yesterday's 20, 25 delta, whatever calendar, and you would have made money into last week. Definitely last week, as vol was getting priced into the action, right? Because vol's like a balloon, right? It's slowly expanding into these strikes, and then the vol crush event happens, and it goes down. So Hammer, you're exactly right, and I would say basically my answer to it is like you could do it both ways. You could play the vol crush, and it worked, and you could absolutely play the vol expansion, and it would work too. So there's two ways to play it. That's why I love calendars. You can short vol at certain spots and be long vol at other spots. It's what other instrument in the world can you freaking do that? That would be so. That to me is the part where like I'm not a hedge fund and I'm not an institutional trader, and so I mean that's what I mean to say. You could do it based on just pure delta. You could do it based on like gamma levels if you adhere to like gamma stuff. You could do it like a market profile, like reading tape stuff, or the biggest strikes, what's the biggest open interest. Lots of ways to do it. Lord Calendar, do you have any? Yeah, you check different setups and stuff like that. Um, Lord Calendar, if you were going to give advice for 1 to 2 day deltas, would you change it for an FOMC announcement, or would you keep it the same? Sure thing, Hammer. Thanks for asking. Yeah, yeah. Everybody plays it in different ways. Well, you guys caught me in a weird spot because I could talk about calendars all day long, and I do. Um, we will continue the discussion tomorrow, and this, well, we're going to talk about them tomorrow, so please come out. I, I'm pumped because this is we now have gotten into the stuff that I'm like I nerd out on, and so um, tomorrow let's just do what we did the last 30 minutes and just start talking about some deep dive stuff of the theta, early morning theta differentials, maybe even some second order Greeks like Vanna and Charm and all that stuff, and how does that work with calendars? So much fun stuff. It will be posted, yeah. So we will. I'll post that pretty soon. I usually put it right after the recording in the Cigar Lounge channel, but I think Loom takes a minute for it to upload. I mean, it's going to be an hour video, so uh, yeah. All right, everybody. I'm going to head out, find my freaking charger. Thanks so much for jumping in, and we'll talk soon.